climate change and environmental expert Dr. John Osonwa joins us now from our studio in Abuja. Doctor, thank you for making time to join us today. Looking at the pictures of devastation in the French and British overseas territories and the islands with populations barely enough to make a state, what are your thoughts on how powerful Hurricane Irma is?
Well, clearly we are very much astounded by what we're seeing. You recall just last week we dealt with Harvey as a very strong hurricane with a lot of devastation to Texas. Now you have Irma. On the heels of Irma, we have another hurricane that is developing. So it's a troubling trend. And I think that when you look at the larger implications, clearly climate change is at work here, and we need to do something.
Is it just climate change or global warming? Which one's at play here in Irma? Or with Irma,
well,
sorry.
You know, global warming is a symptom of climate change. It's one of the ways we measure that the climate is changing. There are other ways where you have species extinction, you have extreme weather events as we're seeing, but clearly when you see the kind of devastation we're witnessing, you have to look at the impact of global warming on the ocean and also in terms of the atmosphere. You know that hurricanes form because you have warm temperatures, warm ocean temperatures, also compounded by warm atmospheric temperature. So when you have those two factors coming together in this particular season, this is the hurricane season in the Atlantic, you're going to have a lot of hurricanes, but the magnitude of what we're seeing is unprecedented.
Doctor, was there any way any of these areas could have prepared to lighten the devastation they're already experiencing?
I think the U.S., when it comes to preparation and when it comes to planning before this kind of event happens, I think the U.S. is right there, as good as it gets. But there's a limit to what we can do in terms of preparation in advance of an event like this. You can evacuate, you can warn people, you can issue some kind of call for volunteers to come out before the event happens, but that's a limit to what you can do. When you have a hurricane that is packing wings of 250 kilometers an hour, there's nothing you can do. Someone was saying that it's like standing on top of a race car and trying to maintain your balance. That's how fierce the wind can be. So there's very little you can do. You have to evacuate. You have to provision for people who cannot evacuate by having shelters. You have to issue warnings. You have to call up your volunteers to be ready. I think they are doing the right stuff. But the question is, back here in Nigeria, are we doing things like that to prepare for disaster?
I was actually going to ask that, Doctor. Days before the hurricane hit, as you rightly mentioned, there were already warnings about the hurricane, both for Harvey and for Irma, and preparations will also be made, as you rightly mentioned, albeit the residents here in Nigeria, we've seen devastation caused by flooding, and there was a warning earlier in the year that there will be more rains dumped on many areas, many states in Nigeria. In fact, that warning went to several states, Lagos included, and some of the states that we're seeing right now that are flooded. But it seems that, you know, we were less prepared. So could preparation have had less impact? Could it have caused these disasters to have less impact here in Nigeria if we put more thought into preparation?
Of course. I think one of the fundamental flaws we have now with our disaster management is that we are being reactive. We are devoting a lot of our resources. I would even posit to you 90% of our resources we're devoting to post-flooding relief and response, sharing mattresses, giving bread, giving Indomie, and all these kinds of stuff. We need to focus 90% of our energy to prevention and planning. That is where the action is, because it is so much more expensive to us in geometric proportion when the flood happens. But if we are doing things that we need to do to prevent the flooding, we're going to be better off. The flooding is a natural phenomenon, but the kind of unprecedented flooding, the severity of the flooding we're seeing is new, and it is directly attributable to climate change factors. We've talked about this in the past. You look at the Arctic region, for the past 12 years, we have set records. The warmest temperatures for each year eclipses the record for the previous year. and that is leading to a whole lot of melting of the ice.